things happen and something almost better comes along as a result of these things happening. Now, Steve Cook came in halfway through, didn't know what was going on. I only met him about, I don't know, a month ago. We've had some interesting conversations, and I was like, one day I want you to present to our members. He's turned up, and I'm like, I suppose you could have a little chat along the lines of what Grayson's been talking about, collaboration and mediation. And he said, oh, well, I've just been talking to the Taliban. I mean, do you want to tell us a little bit about that? So I'd like to hand over and give Steve, the Undaunted, 5, maybe 10 minutes, just so we can hear what he's been up to and be inspired by some of the things he's been doing. Over to you now, Steve.
Crikey. The Undaunted have suddenly become very daunted. What a lovely collection of people. Hi, hello everyone. Yeah, I'm Steve, yeah, I've just turned up late, which is not great. And I have some understanding of aspects of conflicts, which may or may not be useful. Just as a very brief background, I'm the founder of 3 organisations. One is called Unstitution. And Unstitution is devoted to collaborative impact coalitions between business, government, civil society organisations, community groups, and so on around the world. Our focus is on citizen-empowered impacts in society. But I've also founded, with many other people, The Unheard. And The Unheard is for the voiceless and the unheard of the world, one way or another. We talk about the story of a life and the life of a story. And people's living and livable experiences. So that's The Unheard. And The Undaunted is for the undaunted in the world. And so we are about how do we change the dynamics across systemic thinking, patterns and contextualization in organizations, and how that affects real human beings. I've also been a co-founder, I am a co-founder of a thing called Age of Human. And many years ago, to your point, a short while ago, Jill, I did invent Be Humankind as Oxfam's positioning. So yeah, kindness is kind of cool. I think the reason why Jill's asked me to talk right now is, as I said to her at the beginning, I've just come back from a number of things. One of the places I've just come back from is 2 provinces in Afghanistan, where I've been negotiating between ISIS and the Taliban on how to return people to their communities and for those people to be safe. A lot of that work is centered around women's empowerment, which obviously, as we all know, is a massive issue in Afghanistan and elsewhere. But I've also, as part of that, been working with the United States government, National Security Council, and all of their grant and humanitarian aid program funding into Afghanistan. So that's been a challenge, to say the least, and it's been a little bit dangerous. But I'm also just back from Ukraine on 2 missions, one of which is to look at how we start returning refugees to parts of Ukraine that we can, in fact, do that. How do we rebuild agricultural and local economic systems in places in Ukraine? It's something that we've been doing in Afghanistan as well. And how do we start? And I've also been working with the Polish governments on issues around human trafficking that have come out of refugees that left Ukraine and went to Poland, and how organised crime has been engaged in human trafficking activity between refugees and people around the world. So these are fairly challenging environments, but they're environments that I think are indicative, and somebody in our breakout room said this. I was in a conversation with an organisation, I work very closely with Heidi Kuhn, who's just won the World Food Prize, and with Maria Delors, who's just won the World Peace Prize. And myself and Heidi Kuhn were talking about conflicts in Afghanistan. We're involved in landmine clearance and things like that. And we were talking about conflicts, and I happened to be looking out of my apartment in Glasgow, which is on a hill looking out over the city of Glasgow. And I made the point to her at that point that there are no landmines, as far as I'm aware, in the city of Glasgow. I'd be very surprised if we found one. But there is conflict going on every street and in every home and in every organisation, business and otherwise. And so the question, as we discussed in the breakout room, is less about conflicts and how to avoid it. For us, it's more about conflicts and how to address it. how to turn it into constructive conflicts where everybody's views and opinions are truthfully and meaningfully expressed. And that includes predominantly people who are marginalized. At the risk of sounding dramatic, I was with an Afghan mother who's a farmer because she's a widow, and she has 2 teenage daughters who've both lost their legs to landmines, and they're working out how to start growing peach orchards. And she's just been allowed to start her own restaurant where she's able to cook food that she has grown on her own farm. And that's a really powerful story. It's got nothing particularly to do with conflicts, other than the mountains of conflict that she had to go through to just arrive at that point. And so the human story, the individual story, and the systemic or systems nature of conflicts are really important when we bring these things together. So I don't know how long you want me to speak for, Jill. I could talk all day, but one of the things we're involved in a lot of areas, but one of the things we're involved in, so just for clarity, I'm autistic. I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder because I've been shot twice and blown up once and stabbed twice. So that's kind of cool. And it's very difficult for a neurodivergent person to be understood, to be heard, to be accepted, or to avoid conflicts in certain situations in the workplace. And this is something that we find time after time after time. So when we sort of triangulate the individual in a specific environment that could be very highly charged, or become very highly charged at some point during the conversation or the discussion, we start to move into incredibly complicated areas of conflict resolution between individuals and actually on an organizational level as well. There are conflicts of interest everywhere, but there are also enormous returns on peace, as we call these things. The returns on peace, the value of either maintaining or reinstating peace in any environment post-conflict. And so that's just a little bit about me. I didn't know I was going to say anything or do anything, but I think this is such an incredibly important subject, and it applies absolutely everywhere. I had a big row with my wife this morning. I feel really bad about it. End of.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. That is so true. I love that reflection, that what those ladies in Afghanistan had to go through, that conflict they had to go through to achieve what they were achieving. And we feel like we're stuck and we can't walk outside the front door because the person in the office is being mean to us. You know, the different dimensions that you share with us is phenomenal. And it's, as Grayson said at the very beginning, it's this awareness of who we are, who we're being, and what we're capable of, and what we can achieve. So thank you, and hopefully we'll have a conversation in the next not too distant future, and we'll book you in for a proper session. It would be absolutely lovely to have you here. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Quick round of applause for Steve.